I just recorded the interview with Andy Walters. This guy, he's the CEO of Emerge House. They're a consulting and development shop in AI and generative AI. I like to call it applied AI because they're not developing models necessarily, but they're kind of figuring out how to apply AI, RAG, vector databases, all sorts of interesting, very cool stuff to make businesses, either generate more revenue or potentially cut costs and whatever. They work with SaaS companies, they work with all sorts of other businesses as well, even a construction company, which he talks about in the interview. Super cool interview. I am genuinely super excited about, like, even me personally going into AI and getting out of crypto, just because I simply, like, aside from analogical like examples like Andy, but even like the data shows there's just a lot more money in AI than crypto nowadays, and there has been so for quite some time now. And also the impact seems to be bigger. Like, AI can impact a construction company. Crypto, maybe not so much. And crypto, to a certain degree, feels like it's kind of has found its PMF in payments, and everything else, maybe not so much. Whereas AI feels like there's a lot of growth and impact left to create. I'm thinking about this. I'm definitely thinking about this a lot nowadays. But yeah, super interesting interview. If you want to learn more about like AI, how to build solutions with AI, and the business of it as well, watch it. So one of the reasons why I even wanted to interview you, I just told you I'm in crypto and a software engineer. I kind of wanted to start a business of my own recently. I've been coding for 5 years. It kind of feels like a natural step. I want to have kids soon, so it's like, okay, if not now, then when? And the natural kind of business that came to mind was, what if I built an agency? Like, what if I freelanced in crypto? Because that's what I know.
Yeah.
But I recently watched the interview you did with Corey, and I actually watched it twice. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
And there's one particular thing that piqued my interest. You specifically said, right now it's like drinking water from a fire hose in AI consulting.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you still stand behind that statement or if you just kind of said it. I would like to take your opinion on that now.
Yeah.
I actually looked at the statistics for how much VC money is in crypto versus AI right now, and the multiple is mind boggling.
Yeah. What is the multiple?
You got like $1 or $2 billion this year in VC money in crypto, and you got something like $33 billion just in the first 2 quarters in AI, not the
Yeah.
third quarter. When I said the 2 billion in crypto, it's the third quarter as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt that the investments in the AI space are, um, it's just huge, and you'd think, and I hope that they are commensurate with the real value that AI can actually bring. Obviously, most of those investments, are speculative, so we can't say for sure how many of those will turn out. But it's my opinion that AI really does open up an entirely new kind of vista of untapped potential to deliver value. And so, you asked about drinking from a fire hose. I think we're still drinking from the fire hose. Yes, I don't see the pace of AI slowing down. At least not over the last, call it, 3 years. I mean, it's just been advancement after advancement after advancement, and I still think even with each advancement, we are not uh, like even if we were to not have any advancements for another year, say no new foundation model came out, I still think there's trillions of dollars on the table in terms of the AI transformation that Western, or really all the world economies, have to go through to for businesses to integrate these models into their core workflows. So I see a huge opportunity, and I truly think we're just at the beginning.
There is an interesting thing. You said that you don't know if it's commensurate with the actual value. Obviously, you believe you do. That's why you even bet and you got in this industry in the first place. But there's one interesting thing if you look at the statistics for VC funding, and obviously VC funding is not necessarily a perfect proxy
Sure.
for figuring out, but it's
Reality. We all know that. Yes. They've been led astray before.
yeah, but it's a number we can look at. It's something we can
Yeah.
quantify, right?
Yeah.
In VC, you have like pretty similar numbers in the past 3 years. I think. Let me see if I actually can find the numbers real quick, but you got somewhere around the lines of 40 billion in 2021, 32 billion in 2023, and 37 in 2023. So even though it is higher now in this year, it wasn't that much lower, back then or even 3 years ago. And if you actually look at crypto, you can see that aside from 2021, 2022, when it kind of had its hype,
Yeah.
before that it was pretty low, which isn't the case with AI.
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting to think about generative AI versus traditional AI. I think probably, there's some of that going on in that story there, where the
Yeah.
money has moved to generative AI from these traditional AI investments. Um, yeah, I mean, I think in relation to crypto, I think crypto has had trouble finding that. Um,
The PMF.
killer app, right? PMF, product market fit. And I do think that, without speculating on how close crypto is to getting there or how long it will take, I do think the value with AI is easier to realize.
Yeah.
And so I suspect that is why, so the investment kind of mix looks the way it does between those two.
No, me being in crypto for the past 3 years, I see quite a few really cool applications for crypto. For example, as a payments rails, you can use stable coins. Like if you were to, like, for example, hire me as a contractor to do something, and you're in the US, I'm in Romania, it's a huge ordeal to get money sent in the traditional way. It's actually very easy to send money with stable coins. You can literally send it in a minute.
Yeah.
It's here. So that's a huge application for crypto. There's a few
Yes.
other things.
No doubt.
It's not gonna change every, like people tried to apply it to social media, they tried to apply it to games, those didn't really
Right.
work out. I
Right.
think it's gonna stick to the financial sector for the most part.
It certainly wouldn't surprise me. I'm by no means an expert in crypto. But no, that wouldn't surprise me if that ends up being the primary use case.
Yeah.
To speculate a little beyond my sort of expertise, um, yeah, I think the 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 reserve currency being the U.S. dollar as it is, if that were to change, I certainly see the value of crypto becoming a lot higher.
Yeah.
There's just a lot more reason at that point, and I think part of the issue is that right now the people who tend to need to use a crypto channel to move money are not always great people, and they may be doing malicious things with that money, right? Or bad actors. So that's a tough problem. It's a tough problem. So it feels to me, when I, as an outsider to that industry, like there probably is a use case in here floating around that's really valuable, but it's unclear how long it will take to where that really becomes prevalent.
I've lately, like, ever since I watched the interview with you in Corey, I've kind of looked into AI and I've thought a lot about it because I, like, the only reason I even started Leet Software, which is my little consulting shop, is obviously to make money. Everybody
Yeah,
wants to make money. And so if I can make my job easier and go somewhere where you're drinking water from a fire hose, which crypto used to be 2 years ago, but it's not anymore,
yeah,
like, yeah, that's what I would like to do. And I've been looking at all the sorts of different things you guys do, and there's a few topics which I kind of want to touch on. One
yeah,
of them is that I've seen there's a stark difference between what I thought was AI and what actually is AI in terms of what you're going to actually implement technically to drive business goals. in my mind, it was like, oh, I got to learn PyTorch and I got to figure out how to train machine learning models and do all these crazy things. In
Yeah.
reality, it seems like it's less technical than that, more accessible to your normal software engineer.
Yes.
Stuff like basically how do we figure out the product side of things by implementing a model, maybe by doing some RAG, which I've now learned what it is.
Yep, yep, yep. Absolutely. There's this role that, or this new title really, that's taken root in the last, call it, couple of years, called the AI engineer role. And people have different definitions for this, but my definition is it sort of sits in between traditional ML engineering, where you've got your deep ML expertise, you are training models from scratch, you're writing, like you said, working with PyTorch, um, and then you've got your traditional application engineer or software engineer, however you want to think about that. Uh, the AI engineer sort of sits between those, where some AI engineers, yeah, maybe they are using PyTorch and going really deep into the ML side of things, but you don't necessarily have to. In the AI engineering world, what you need to be good at is, yes, RAG, understanding how to architect solutions around, generally speaking, around using vectors, right, to do interesting things. Um, Solutions around how to implement different models, being good with understanding the different capacities in multimodal models, general familiarity with how to build, observability and evaluations around these products. And then, yes, also on the product side, being able to architect a solution that truly drives value. That is that's extremely important. So that AI engineer role, and so not only everything that I just said is part of that role, but then also you have this mix of the software engineering side as well, which is like, hey, I mean, we're an AI shop, but that doesn't mean that all the time we spend coding, we're only doing generative AI stuff. We're not. Like, a lot of these solutions get deployed to an API backend in Python or Node or whatever, and there's total just normal software engineering that goes around that, right? So having that traditional SWE skill set is great. It's an incredible starting point. And you can start in the ML side too, which I know that's not the case for you, but anyway, this new AI engineer role is sort of right between those two.
You see, my problem with that is if I even do ever decide to go into AI rather than stick to crypto, um, I would feel like an imposter. For one,
Mm,
I would obviously be new to some of these things, even though I can learn them. I feel like I can learn them.
yeah,
Also, like even just calling someone an AI engineer and then you don't touch the more intricate parts,
yeah,
like logically I see the value that can be created this way,
yeah.
but emotionally I'm thinking, are you an imposter or am I an imposter?
Right, right. No, it's a great question. And let's see how to tackle that one. First of all, there is a funny difference between putting somebody who has deep ML expertise on an actual generative AI project and putting somebody who's just really good at working with models onto a generative AI project. Guess who typically does better? It's not the deep ML folks. The deep ML folks, they can get really bogged down in the details, right? But the reality is, once these models started to come out, people started playing with them, and the people who were the tinkerers were the ones who noticed, oh, like, what if we could do these kinds of prompt injection attacks, or if we, I don't know if you remember, in I guess it was maybe a couple of years ago, a lot of these hacks were coming out where, like you said, like, um, oh, I have no fingers, so I need you to type all the code for me. It would work better. Or there was these little like prompt engineering phrases that you could come up with, and just people on the internet, no degree in ML or whatever, they were coming up with these hacks that would increase performance like significantly, right? And so what's happened is that our ML engineers and incredible expertise at companies like OpenAI and Anthropic and Google, they've brought us this technology, but it's a bit of a black box, and it's really opened up a space for a lot of exploration. And I was sort of there when retrieval augmented generation was invented. Like I I did it before there was ever a name for it, or at least insofar as I knew that there was a name for it. I had the idea that, oh, this prompt isn't going to know the right answer, so what if I stuffed some potential answers into the prompt with a
Yeah.
with an API, and all of a sudden it'll give the right answer. It's not that hard. Like if you understand the AI engineering stuff from first principles, um, and those first principles don't necessarily need to go deeper than like, oh, I can use an API to get this sort of intelligence on demand. that is that class of problems is a large enough scope that you can bed down in that without being an imposter. And the ML engineers, they're not necessarily writing assembly code either, right? Like they're depending on a layer of abstractions as
Yeah, yeah,
well,
yeah.
right? So it's not illegitimate, but I do understand the feeling. And of course, like I don't think it's fair to walk into any field and declare yourself an expert without any experience. But on the other hand, like it does not take that long, especially if you have a software engineering background. Like it took me about probably like a year of playing with it, reading white papers, watching lectures, and just building stuff, right? Like it took about that long for me to go, okay, yeah, I think I've got a sense here of what the real pieces are in this AI engineering thing. And I'm definitely not the world's greatest AI engineer. Like I've hired some of them, but but if I had continued on that path where my whole goal was just to become an AI engineer, like it's totally doable. It probably would have been maybe a couple of more years till I could have been top of the line or whatever if I had the the time to do that. But I went more the business route. But anyway, so like, yeah, don't feel like you're an imposter. This whole generative AI revolution has, again, it's so early, and you can even push the field forward without necessarily writing a transformer, right?
Wow.
So
What sort of like big? First of all, I wanted to say that I kind of named in my mind what you do and what you guys do. Applied AI, because
yeah,
you're not
yep,
really doing, in my mind, you're not really doing AI. You're kind of just applying AI, which can, again, as I said, logically, I fully understand it's super valuable.
right,
And I've kind of read some of your articles on Emerge
yeah,
House, and I've read some other articles. I found some books, and I've looked into prompt engineering and RAG, and I've kind of understand that the maybe the core idea is you're taking the LLMs that exist, that the people who are more academic develop, and
yeah.
then you just kind of help the prompt in a, because even RAG to a certain degree is putting stuff in the prompt.
That is what RAG is. Yeah, RAG is what
How
you
you
do.
put the stuff there is the hard part with the
Yeah,
vector databases and so on, right?
yeah, yeah. I'll give you like my quick primer on RAG. RAG is what you do when the vanilla model is not going to know the right answer. So if you just open up ChatGPT and ask it, you know,
The weather.
what's the weather in Austin, Texas today? If that model does not have access to a tool where it can go call the internet, it's not going to know the right answer. So
Yeah.
how do we then give it to get the right answer? Well, we got to start sticking stuff into the prompt and then provide the user query and say, okay, AI, you figure out the answer from the information I've just provided. And there's a range of ways in which you can figure out what the information that you want to stick in that prompt is.
Yeah.
RAG has really been kind of monopolized intellectually by the idea of vector search, because vector search is very powerful. So if I take a user query and I vectorize that, which if you're not familiar with vectors for your listeners, that's basically a way to turn a concept into coordinates. And so you have a kind of mathematical um, location in some space for a concept. So I take a user query, I coordinate that in like intellectual space, and then I look across my database of other documents that I have, and I find something that matches, and then I just pull a bunch of those things and I dump them into the prompt, and I say to the LLM, okay, now based on the information I just gave you, try and answer the user's query.
Yeah, the
That
simple, I guess the simple way somebody who doesn't really know a lot about AI to understand RAG is to open cursor right now and point the AI to some stuff you already did and tell them to do something similar to what you already did, but to another function. And that's kind of what RAG does, only more complex.
say that again, but open cursor and what?
So let's say you open cursor and you have
Yeah,
a function that you've done in a certain fashion, in a certain style.
yeah,
And then you have to write another function on a different topic, but there are similarities. You tell cursor to kind of inspire itself from the function you did write and then to
I
write
see.
the next function.
I see. Yeah, I mean, in a certain sense, that would be related in the sense that you're having the AI come up with an answer based on some information you're giving it, right? Yes, that's true. RAG, though, is more typically it's more oriented towards question answering, and
Okay.
so like maybe a better example for in your cursor example would be, okay, open up your cursor project, and then you want to know, hey, in which file did I put in, did I make this function that does this, right? And so then you type in cursor, you type at code base, and what, and then answer, type in
Oh,
your question. So what's happening there? That's true RAG, where that at code base is including your whole code base, and now that made it into the prompt, and then the AI is looking at all that, looking at your query, and then creating the answer. So that's RAG. But that's a good example of another type of way of putting information into the prompt that's not vector search. So you didn't have to use vector search to pull your whole code base. You explicitly said pull that in. So that's another way explicitly. But there's also keyword search, for example. Like old school keyword search can be a way that you can um, get that information. And then there's hybrid approaches, both keyword and vector combined. Sometimes, depending on your use case, there may be, um, I mean, API information that you stick in based on certain conditions. Um, and then there's tool calling. So with tool calling, you can have the AI call a tool that will then get the information and put that back in the prompt. And one of those tools could be another AI, right? So those are just like, maybe that's an exhaustive list, but those are many ways anyway in which you can figure out the information you need to stick into a prompt. And
isn't
go
no, go
ahead.
ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and a lot of the engineering that goes around this is, you know, first of all, you'll after you've been doing this for a while, you have a good intuition for the kinds of architectures here that will work for the problem you're trying to solve. So it's data preparation, data strategy, then the whole architecture around actually implementing the RAG, and then it's the testing, then it's the evaluation, and then it's the performance as well, like guaranteeing it can work at scale to a certain um, accuracy. And so that's what a lot of the AI engineering stuff is. It's you would think it's kind of simple, like, oh, we just put the information, give it to the AI, great, we're done. Yeah, but there's actually a lot of work that goes around that.
So this is interesting because this is exactly what I wanted to ask when I interrupted you earlier. You have seen the notebook stuff that Google launched, where you put your
Yeah.
documents in and it creates a podcast about it. I'm wondering, isn't there any sort of fear in the industry around, hey, what if some big incumbent just makes RAG so easy and so productized that what we do right now is going to be, so easy that it's just not going to matter anymore?
Well, I think that fear is already sort of priced in to the current climate, in the sense that there are great tools. So, Emerge House, my company, I'm very happy and honored to say, is a expert partner with Llama Index, and so
Okay.
Llama Index is a framework for doing RAG. And so it's not so much about, for us, writing the kind of basic implementations of RAG that we're doing. That's not a lot of the work anymore. Instead, again, as the things I said, data strategy, um, all of the figuring out for this particular problem which kinds of things are we going to dump into the prompt. And then it's writing the code to pull that data, right? Worrying about authentication. There's so many things that go around that framework. I'm not at all concerned. I think for certain kinds of maybe for certain kinds of uh, use cases, certain kinds of like maybe the SMB market, perhaps, or something. There could be some solutions that come out that are super productized or whatever. But in the kinds of stuff that the kinds of clients that we're working with, startups, larger enterprises, they have super custom setups, they have super custom needs. Like there's a lot of custom work that needs to be done there to bring these things to bear.
What the so you said SMB might benefit from productized solution, and you guys usually work with startups and enterprise. That's still a pretty big niche. I know you said you don't
Oh
want
yeah,
niche, but like, what's the usual customer look like?
yeah.
What are their needs? How are they coming into? Hey, let's hire a merge house. What are the goals, so to say?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have a mix. So, one of our niches is startups, and oftentimes a startup comes to us. They've raised on a demo, right, and now they really need to get serious about their AI technology, or for some reason their technical team is no longer available or something, and they need some on-demand technical talent to come in and get them to the next level, or they need augmentation. And so, typically the kinds of problems we solve for them, it's hard to put with startups. It's hard to say that there's some general pattern, except for they want to do something typically revolutionary or that hasn't been done before with AI, but it needs to work it needs to work well, and it needs to work at scale, or at least be scalable. So those are some of the concerns. Then, if we're working with more like what tech would call legacy companies um, for internal process automation, that's another big piece. And so, typically there, folks are coming to us with some workflow, and you typically got to have a scale to it. It's like, okay, we've got 30 people full time doing this, and it's taking them 4 hours a day. Can you take it down to 20 minutes? Right. And if you can, that's a huge value for us. We're willing to invest in this initiative. And so that's typically the kind of problem that we solve for those companies.
What's the sort of a big, maybe you can actually give a real example, maybe you can't, and
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you can answer, we can move on. But what's like sort of a big application within these companies where they need internal workflows made more efficient, where one, it's really impactful, and two, it it just makes a lot of sense to, well, it's kind of the same thing, right? Impactful and
Sure.
makes, but like it's a common thing that it happens for this to work out.
Yeah, yeah. Now, happy to give an example. I won't say the name of the company, but it's a medium-sized construction company that
Okay.
we work with, and they have a team of folks who are analyzing um, uh, bids that come in, and they have a team of folks who are analyzing PDFs. They're scrolling through thousands and thousands of pages of PDFs to pick out certain pages just to as the first step in their estimation process. And this can take 2 or 3 hours for a single bid, just that portion of the process. And so we came in and within a few, I think maybe 4 or 5 months, I think around 4 months, we took them from that taking a couple hours, 2 to 3 hours, to 20 to 40 minutes. And because our AI that we built for them grabs it. So, yeah, so there's a lot of companies with workflows that can be optimized. I think one of the challenges is that because this technology is so new, people do not yet have the mental Rolodex in their heads of the kinds of things that AI can do. And so they don't even know that it's possible. And so part of what we end up doing is working with clients who, they know they need to do something with AI, probably they're not too sure what, and we'll help guide them towards the use cases that we can be effective on.
That's what I was thinking as you're seeing this little story. I'm thinking, okay, probably vector database, probably chunking to kind of figure out how to find the concepts in the PDF. But I'm also thinking, how do you even pitch this to a construction company? My father used to own a construction company. I'm just thinking, wow, pitch to this guy AI. You know,
Yeah.
how do I even explain it to him? How do I tell him to him? How do I, as a person who doesn't understand construction, even figure out what processes to even look at?
Right.
It feels like such a problem because I don't know his domain. He doesn't know my domain. How do you connect the two
Yes.
and figure out where to even find this efficiency unlock?
Yeah, well, I heard two questions there. One is how do you talk to them about AI, and then the second is how do you sort of bridge the gap between these separate domains that y'all are coming from. So on the first question of how to talk about AI, you know, the main thing is the client doesn't care about AI, right? What the client cares about is the value you can deliver. And in this particular case, we delivered a cutting edge solution, and like the client, I'm sure they're glad that the value is there, but they don't have the same level of ooh and ah and interest in the fact that it's soda and and sort of cutting edge. That doesn't mean anything to them. All they care about is this, does this thing work, and is it going to save me time, right?
Yeah,
So when you're speaking to clients at the beginning about this stuff, depending on the technical expertise of the client, some clients are certainly different, but in an industry like construction, you're more likely to find folks where they're not concerned about the deep inner workings of the technology. Again, they're very focused on the value. And then, secondly, on the issue about how to kind of bridge that gap, it's a great question, and I think this points to the need for this kind of business analyst skills that
okay.
I think are going to become increasingly important to developers over time. I think we have been living in a world over the last whatever, call it 30, 40, 50 years of software development where engineers could be relatively isolated from the product side of the equation. And, a lot of traditional kind of team structures are set up that way. You have the product manager or the project
Yeah,
manager, and they're sort of in charge of understanding why the hell we're building whatever we're building. And then the engineers, they don't care. All they're here for is give me a list of tasks, give me a list of interesting problems to solve, and I'll knock them out in the order you tell me, right? Right. And but over time, that has started to shift. Over time, already, even before AI, like I think part of what was behind Scrum was let's bring engineers more into this process. Let's get them aware, talking directly to our clients or our internal clients, and aware of what the product's doing, because that actually leads to more alignment across the team. But I think we're going to see an evolution in that with AI, where if engineering is more about managing AIs who are writing a lot of code for you, that's going to free up your time to be thinking more holistically about the product. And so I think it's high time that engineers who are interested in being very valuable in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, that you begin to understand the product side of things more, because I think the coding side probably always valuable to some degree. I just think there's going to be less and less of that, and quickly the
yeah,
bottleneck in software development is not going to be coding it; it's going to be figuring out what to build.
yeah.
Um,
I think that's very fair. I had an interview recently with Christian Montoya. He's a product manager at MetaMask. You probably don't know it, but it's not yet published. But one of the topics that came about is generalist versus specialist, and we eventually concluded that an engineer that knows more of the product side or the business side, or on the other side, a product manager that can code and can think of architectures, is immensely more valuable than potentially even a specialist who really knows their niche well, because you can just kind of, as you said, view it all holistically and touch it all and basically move the project and actually hit the business goals which you're trying to hit, because ultimately that's what most engineering is about. It's about hitting certain business goals.
yeah, That's right. And like, I should probably caveat this by saying I think maybe at a deeper layer, or sort of one layer deeper here on this, is whatever your engineering job is today. If you're coding today, if you were to take 50% of your time, let's say, and just think one higher level of abstraction on what you're doing. So if you're dialed in and you're writing COBOL code every day, right? And there's like 30 other engineers writing COBOL code next to you. Like, are you necessarily going to get into more product thinking? Like, maybe not, but you're probably going to go a higher level of like just looking up and seeing a little bit more about what's going on
Yeah.
in your organization and how you can provide value there. So it's not to say that all engineers are going to become product people, because I think there certainly are plenty of specialties where it's going to take a long time for coding to really um, get truly commoditized by AI. But I do think pretty much every engineer over the next 5, 10, 15 years will see this in their work, that whatever they're doing now, they have a little more space to look up and understand what's going on in the organization and see if they can provide value kind of earlier in that chain than they're used to.
I read that in a sense as like what AI does now is kind of like the revolution that high level languages brought when
Yeah,
when not we, because I wasn't an engineer back then, but
sure.
as an industry we moved from assembly and C and C++ more so into stuff like Ruby Rails and whatnot, which is much easier to write and you can be more productive.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's exactly right. And one of the interesting things that I think AI opens up the space for is, the traditional engineer, we thrive on math and deterministic thinking, and um, it's interesting. I don't know that that skill set will become less valuable, but I do think there is more space for more creative folks who maybe don't have those same analytical strengths, but who are still able to kind of orchestrate AIs to write code for them, or maybe they work with some folks who are highly traditional engineering minded. But now we can have, it's almost like the project managers or the product managers, could they start managing the AIs to write code themselves directly? Like, maybe, almost. So you have this kind of confluence and convergence is really the word I'm looking for there. Convergence of roles around
Hmm.
people managing software. It seems to be sort of coming together somewhere between the traditional product manager, engineer role. Somewhere in there, it seems to be converging.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's fair. uh no, I think that's really fair. I had something in my mind and I just completely lost it.
No worries.
I had completely lost it. I guess one question that I do want to ask you though is obviously AI is making us more productive. I use it daily in my work. All of my coworkers who are also senior engineers use it daily in their work. And you're right, it will kind of converge more into, I like to call it a product engineer role
Yeah.
rather than a super specialized engineer. Do you
Pre-engineer.
Yeah. Do you think this might skew the supply and demand? Because there's multiple ways of thinking about it. Some people say, oh, just like higher level languages, this will blow up the demand for engineers. And even though there's more engineers, it's going to be fine. Other people say, oh, wow, it's going to be so easy to build software that we're going to have so much software that either that again feeds into more jobs, or if that means you need less engineers. Obviously there's also the global movement. You got guys from Romania working with US companies, and
Right.
I'm making more money, they're saving money, everybody's happy.
Right.
How do you see the market for software engineering go, if you have an opinion on that at all?
I do. You know, First of all, the term computer used to refer to a human. Right? A computer was somebody who had a job, and their job was to compute numbers. That was the first instance of a computer. Most people don't know that.
I had no
And that is obviously completely commoditized, right? But if you imagine like how many computers there were when they were humans versus how many programmers who are using computers are now, like the field has expanded many, many orders of magnitude, right? So, did those original jobs get automated away? Yes, but it did seem to lead to many more jobs in high paying jobs as well. I think something similar is at foot here. It's very difficult to say right now the kind of content of exactly what is going to happen, but the shape of what is going to happen, at least at the past, is going to be a guide for us, seems to be along the lines you said. Um, we should probably fear job displacement, automation, things like that in kind of in the short run, because the kinds of things we were doing even 2 years ago in software engineering that were not possible to do with AI, now they are, and more of that will get eaten up. And I think you would be not well served to sort of place your head firmly in the sand and pretend this is not happening. Like
Oh
it
yeah,
is happening, right? And um, so if you're only writing code by hand today, you're way behind. You absolutely need to start using AI and understanding how that works. On the other hand, if you are using AI and you're getting very good at using AI to write code, like at me as an employer, that is exactly the kind of employee I look for. I don't want somebody who writes code by hand. I really don't. Like
fair.
they're not going to move as fast. They're going
Yeah.
to get stuck, and they're not going to ask AI. They're going to try and find the answer on Stack Overflow. And like we all know what a pain that was, right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
so. But on the other hand, if you're great with AI, I'm absolutely interested in talking with you. So whatever the shape of, or whatever the content of this that is going to sort of come about, I don't know, but the shape is there'll probably be more jobs, and whatever happens, with the main thing you want to do is be part of this wave. Don't let the wave crash over you. Just be part of it. So I think the best thing you can do if you're an engineer is to just get good at using AI to help you do your job.
I fully agree. I'm also very much so a techno optimist. I like to believe that even though sometimes the growing pains may be painful, they're growing pains. You're growing. Things are happening.
Absolutely.
Like all the stuff we've invented over the past 2,000 years. Yes, people lost jobs. Yes, sometimes it might have hurt. But ultimately, we are in a better place. And I think the same happens with AI, where it's gonna get better, even if some people are gonna get hurt. Even potentially, I might get hurt because of it over the next 5 years. But I think I can adapt. I kind of am very confident in myself to adapt, and I try to stay as up to date as possible. I
And let
actually,
me I'll just add one more kind of
yeah,
positive spin on this. Somebody asked me recently, I think I might have said this on the other podcast, asked me if I would recommend that my son go into software engineering.
oh, interesting.
Um, because my son's 2 years old, so he's got 16 years or more, right, to really wait to worry about that question. So the question is, yeah, in 16 years, will it be a valuable thing to go into software engineering? And of course, 5 years ago, I would have absolutely said, "Oh yeah, definitely go, do it." But now it really gave me pause. Like, I don't know. And so I did a lot of thinking about it. Here's where I landed: is that at least right now, it seems as if the kind of intelligence that we're building with large language models, unless we have some kind of new paradigm, one of the limitations with that is it seems to not that technology underlying the underlying transformer technology seem to be very good at certain kinds of fuzzy tasks that we as humans do, that AIs could not do before, that computers could not do before. But on the other hand, when it comes to um, values, when it comes to um, the ability to engage with humans in a way that is going to pull them in a certain direction, um, effectively, I'm not sure LLMs are ever going to get us there. I'm a huge believer that LLMs have a lot of potential left in them in terms of creating an incredible amount of intelligence that we've never seen before. But it is kind of an alien intelligence. Um,
Okay.
and so I think for a long time, there's going to be room for a synthesis between the human neural network, which just has different properties and is slightly geared slightly differently, and these intelligent AI neural networks. A synthesis of those two things, at least for the foreseeable future, is probably going to be more valuable than one of those things on their own. And so that's why I think, again, in the long term, maybe not, but in the medium term here, we've got a few things. Humans have a few things going for us, like we're embodied. We have goals, we have values. AIs struggle to have those qualities, and so yeah, if we can synthesize with them, then we become extremely valuable.
In a certain sense, I like to already think we're doing that, albeit in a very high latency and rudimentary way, but just having this little guy over here with
Yes,
ChatGPT.
yes,
Uh,
yeah, right, exactly.
but
Um,
definitely, it would be a lot. Like, it would be very interesting to see this become a low latency, very direct thing where but who knows in the next 50 years?
Well, yeah, and I mean, I'm not necessarily even thinking of like true brain computer interface. Even just engaging with ChatGPT or Cursor or whatever, even that is a much higher bandwidth
Oh, yeah.
engagement that we can have with computers than we've ever been able to have before. And so, yes, I expect that that will continue to be very valuable. That
You know,
synthesis.
you said you wouldn't really hire an engineer who doesn't use AI because they're moving slower, and I think that's very fair. I see a lot of, let's call them Luddites, even though I don't really want to call them that. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that's good. But for simple explanation,
Yeah,
who are kind of against AI, and they're like, "Oh, I don't use AI because it's very dumb when coding." There's a learning curve to figuring out
absolutely.
how to feed it the right problems so you can solve them. It's not good at all types of coding right now.
Right.
But I tried, because I was looking at all this feedback on Twitter, and I was like, am I the dumb one? Maybe they're right. Let's try
Yeah.
an AI detox. I couldn't make
Yeah.
it a week. It was awful.
That's hilarious. AI detox. I've never heard of that. That's
It was
funny.
awful. Like, no
Yeah.
GPT, no perplexity, no cursor,
Right.
no pilot.
Right.
I'm like,
That's
okay,
genius. What a better way to prove the value. That's great.
yeah. I'll have to say it did feel cathartic to a certain degree. It felt
Yeah.
relaxing, but I was nowhere near as fast.
Yeah.
It was annoying at times because I was kind of waiting on a blank canvas and thinking, okay, now what? I mean,
Right.
and this
Right.
is an engineer with 5 years of experience. I'm supposed to, I know how to
Well,
code.
and we did. Right. We all did it before. We made it work. But
Yeah,
right, it's become so integral to our
yeah,
workflows. And I think that just again it demonstrates the value. It demonstrates how much it can speed up our workflows. Um how much easier it is to get access to the information we need, how much it can assist us in every phase of the software development lifecycle. And I do think to your question about, whether people are really using it correctly. It does take a little while to figure out how to use it correctly.
I
You
agree.
do have to spend the time documenting the context, maybe documenting how you want it to code. It takes work to get it set up for
Well,
sure, and
you
it's not
said,
always perfect. And it absolutely can lead you astray.
oh yeah,
Um,
oh yeah,
I still think there's huge issues with like one of the things that I'm surprised nobody has come out with a tool for, and I don't have the time to build, but I'm just waiting for somebody to do it, is a better sort of visual branching off of every time we ask the AI to make a change from like with inside cursor, for example, can I
okay,
then easily like see every change and then easily sort of roll my code back to various sections and merge them visually, because I'll ask cursor to within a single coding session of call it 4 hours, it might make 100 changes, and
oh yeah,
sometimes I'll realize 5 steps into a branch, oh my gosh, it changed some huge, like it removed some feature that was really important just because it thought it was unnecessary. But on the other hand, it's built all this other code. And
Yeah.
so it's really difficult to then go back and you got to do. So I've started really being kind of militant about the way that I do my branching strategy and commit strategy with Git, where pretty much every time it makes a change at my request, I commit
I
that as a
was going to say
change.
precisely this. What I started
Yes.
doing is I don't even look at what cursor or the cursor diff. I say
Yeah.
yes to whatever it does, and I commit
Yeah.
it, and I use the Git to look at it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I just think it could be a little bit easier to visually see that stuff, like with summaries of, oh, this is what it did, something like that.
There was
Um,
a solution a year ago. I never actually tried it because back then I wasn't so trusting in AI. But
yeah.
there was this solution where it wrote Git commits for you,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking if they kept on developing it, maybe it also reads them for you.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I I think until it makes it into cursor, it's like
Yeah,
it's
sure.
lost to me because that's the only IDE I use these days. So
They really took over. Cursor really took over.
I mean, it was a genius strategy, right? Like take fork VS Code. Thanks Microsoft for making this open source and cool. We're that in AI, and now everybody likes our product better than yours. Lol. Yeah, it was a good call.
It was a great call. I had a friend who started coding an extension for VS Code to use AI similar to Cursor, but just an
Yeah,
extension, not the whole IDE. And he
yeah,
started doing it before Cursor, but
yeah.
simply because he was doing it on the side and they were, actually a big team. They just beat him to it so much. And I was like,
Oh yeah,
oh, I like that you're trying to do because he kept on beta testing with me because I was his
yeah.
first thing that used Cursor, and it was just like, yeah, they're like, your idea is good, you were the first to do it, but they're beating you so much.
Oh yeah. Man, I played that game many times and lost. Like when I had my SaaS company, generative AI SaaS company, I had at one point I think it's fair to say, at least from a UI standpoint and a functional standpoint, I was at feature parity with Perplexity.ai. So
Oh
we
wow.
built an AI search engine. I still like our interface better. And it was great. It worked. It did the same trick that Perplexity does. You go out, you search Google with whatever they asked, and then you look at the search results, maybe go look at a few pages, perform RAG on it, and give the answer back. Right? Like we were doing it. The only problem was that Perplexity.ai had the talent, the know-how, the knowledge, the funding, the marketing, distribution, right? They had all those things. I didn't have any of those. And so it was a great idea. It was absolutely dead on. And that guarantees you nothing in terms of
Oh
success.
yeah.
Absolutely nothing,
Yeah.
right? That was a tough lesson to learn, that you can have the genius idea and that
And
doesn't mean
know how to
anything.
do it and actually do it and
Right.
still not be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I see
Yep.
that you moved into the service business, and
Yes.
possibly because of this reason.
Exactly why. It's exactly why, because
Well,
now we're completely resilient now to competition from, if we were a SaaS company, competition from other SaaS companies. We're completely resilient to platform risk, because we also built some solutions that were like we built custom GPTs before there were custom GPTs. I
well,
had at one point Lexi.ai was a no code or low code chatbot builder, and it was basically the whole plan for custom GPTs. We built it. We put it out. It's called Lexi Designer, and it was cool for like a month or something, and then OpenAI came out with it and just completely took that use case out of the water. And so now we're totally resilient to that. When a platform comes out with a new feature, that's awesome. We'll sell our services to our clients and implementing it for them, right? As new models come out, that's great. The solutions we've built probably just got better, or we can then build some more tooling around it to take advantage of the new features. But we're totally resilient in a way that we were not before. And yeah, this has worked much better. I mean, it's not to say I would discourage people from starting a traditional SaaS startup if you have the other pieces. I just didn't have those pieces. I
yeah,
didn't.
you do have to be aware of what you're going into.
Absolutely. And I mean, I also have no regrets for trying. Like, even though it didn't, I mean, I say it didn't work out. We got it mildly profitable and we sold it for a tiny amount of money. So it wasn't
Huh.
like a total failure, but basically it was. It really didn't go anywhere like exciting or interesting. But I have no regrets in trying it because I took everything I knew about startups, everything I knew about programming, all of the, because I've also worked in product, everything I knew about product, and I threw it into the universe and tried my damnedest to make it work, and I learned so much about where the gaps in my abilities were, the gaps in my knowledge were, and I never would have known where the gaps were unless I gave it a shot. So I have no regrets, and so anybody who's thinking about a startup, you know, within reason, it can be absolutely an amazing experience, and
It's
you'll need
inescapable
to
too.
fail.
I think the people that go and build a startup or a product, you have a chip on your shoulder. No amount of logic and reasoning is going to stop you from wanting that.
Right.
Just go
That's
for
right.
it, get it out of your system.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no way to escape it. But I really want to ask you more. I know we're closing in on time, and I want
Yeah.
to take up too much of your time. So I want to kind of ask you about the business side of things as well, since
Yeah.
obviously how much you want to share, especially since
Sure.
this might invite competition in your field.
Sure.
Um, but what is like your biggest challenge when you even started a merge house? I'm thinking based on what I already know about you that it wasn't demand. You guys just did outreach and it just worked out. And as you said, drinking water from us. What I am betting, and maybe I'm wrong, I want to learn, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that the hard part about this business right now for you is hiring.
No, that's not the hard part. That's certainly a challenge, and it's something that we have to constantly be on top of, our recruiting pipeline. But the I would say it's been different problems at different phases.
Okay.
uh, I tell this nice story about how the work is falling off the trucks and there's all this demand, which is true, and it feels like that now, but it did not feel like that when I started, because when I started, it was just me. I had, you know, I didn't have this huge Rolodex of millionaires and billionaires I could call up and say, "Hey, do you need anything with AI? I can build that for you," you know,
Yeah.
and so it was very difficult to get started, and that is why I tried everything I possibly could, and we found a few things that started to work, and so that was our first problem, top of funnel. And then, again, not to say we've totally solved it. I don't think we're ever going to totally solve top of funnel, but it's working. The bigger problem for me now is because we solved that well enough, we are now in a position where we're growing very rapidly, and maintaining the proper culture
Yeah.
is extremely important, and that is really where I spend a lot of my time right now. In addition to kind of the day to day of the company, I'm also the keeper of the culture of the company, and it's important that as you grow, especially when you're small, you really, as you're small, you're setting these little touch points or touchstones of your culture that will guide you and guide the company for the rest of its life. And if you don't get those right, you will pay the price down the road. So, yeah, so that's a big focus for us now.
What's your guys' head count right now?
We're at about 9 people.
That's solid. That's solid.
Yeah.
Do you want to keep on growing, or do you? I mean, I'm guessing based on what you just said that you want to keep on growing and not just stay small.
Yeah, absolutely. We are on track for some significant growth next year, and yes, I expect that we will continue to grow. We've had high triple digit growth this year, and so yes, I am absolutely aiming to to continue the growth.
I think.
You know,
Go
part
ahead.
of that is yes, the money, but it's also, very interesting projects. Working with increasingly sort of interesting problems, interesting companies. There's so much alpha left in this whole AI space, whether that's in AI transformation for existing companies, or whether that's in creating new value streams with AI for new companies. There's just a ton left, and so I think that's going to keep us very interested and very motivated for some years to come.
I think there's I think there's some beauty in staying small. You get to work with everybody directly in your company. There's beauty a lot in that, but I see you're trying to chase the higher impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when you have that larger footprint, you can you can really shape the way that that AI is, that this whole revolution plays out. And that's particularly interesting to me. There are things I think that we have not yet even really scratched the surface of in terms of generative UI, for example. It's a whole new way of interacting with computers, and I'm not convinced that the best modality to interact with AI is just a bunch of text showing up in an assistant chatbot. Maybe not a bad way, but of course there's voice, but there's so many things we can do with pixels on a screen that are far beyond what I think most people even think of today. So having the chance to play a role in exploring that space is just extremely rewarding.
I think that's true because this is also a big part of why I was looking at it. Aside from obviously the money, it feels like, as I said earlier, crypto is more about the finance, whereas this can really impact a whole lot more of the world, and I think that's beautiful
Yes.
too. I really don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yeah.
We can wrap it up. We can wrap it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I'll just say too, in terms of the positive impact, there are so many things that we have not even begun to do that will be huge, just for the well being of the world. In health, what if you can have an AI doctor that's essentially free to the world? In education, what if you can have an AI tutor that's essentially free to the entire world, right? What if you can have an AI lawyer that's essentially free to the entire world? The amount of good that we can do with this technology, like we haven't even started yet, barely. And so I'm just extremely excited about the future that AI can bring about, if we responsibly deploy this technology. And I think the responsibility discussion is often weighted towards limiting the potential harms of AI, which is fine. But really, the I think the more interesting question is trying to find the true well-being that it can bring, the true benefits, and figuring out how we as a society can incentivize those things. Because look, if we had a Manhattan Project right now to
yeah.
build an AI doctor that we made freely available to the world,
Oh
we
yeah.
could get it done in 6 to 12 months. I think that is totally possible. Um, but we just haven't managed to cobble together the amount of resources and talent around this kind of a problem. But there's absolutely huge possibilities here. So anyway,
I'm
I'm super excited for our future with AI.
I'm a break the rails, fuck the rules type of guy.
I like it.
I support you. Go do it all. I actually was thinking about. Um, so I personally have like this thing where I found out this year that I have low testosterone. I don't have the symptoms of it, but I actually have low
Yeah,
testosterone. And so I wanted to just to kind of play with AI and see how much I can learn about RAG and all these things to build a bot that takes in all these case studies on testosterone that I have, because I have like
yeah,
dozens of them,
yeah.
and feed them into it and see if I can learn something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I bet it probably worked pretty well. Of course, I mean, the danger of that is that you're not a doctor, so you can't really tell if it worked well. It seems like it worked well, right? So like obviously, when we're building a real AI doctor, we want to have real doctors be verifying that's correct. But there are these studies that show, I saw a study recently that showed it's not just that doctors are worse than AI at certain kinds of diagnoses. It's that even doctors paired with AI are worse than AI at certain kinds of diagnoses because doctors will distrust the AI. So, in fact, the
Oh,
AI alone without a doctor was actually better, right?
oh,
And so that's an interesting sort of wrinkle to the way that we think about this. It's not that we're building a kind of low cost, one size fits all option to give to the world for health. It may, in fact, be that we're building the best possible version of a healthcare provider, at least when it comes to the knowledge work portion of it. that would supersede even some of the best doctors in the world. So again, super exciting.
I'm excited as well. I can't wait to I can't wait to live through the next 20 years.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I think this was super insightful.
Absolutely. Great to meet you, Alex. It was great being on.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for watching the interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a few new things from it. I obviously, as I have always said in each of these interviews, part of why I'm doing it is to kind of develop my own personal brand and develop the personal like the brand of Leet Software, which is currently a Web3 agency. After this interview, I might transition into AI after I play with RAG and a few other concepts. We'll see, but. Yeah. Aside from me loving the conversations and learning a shit ton of new stuff from them, a big part is also promoting myself. So there's Leet Software. If you need great software engineers, give me a message. Like, go on my email or on my Twitter and just text me.